Hey everybody, it's Matt here at pianoblog.com. I want to talk about visualization today. I've mentioned the idea of visualization in some previous videos, and I realized that some of you might not have any idea what I'm talking about because I don't mean visualization in the kind of way you sometimes hear it used, like visualize my goals, visualize what I want in my life and things like that. I mean visualization in the sense of being able to see the piano, hear the piano, feel yourself playing the piano away from the keyboard without actually touching the piano. And that means that, for example, if I go sit in a chair and I'm practicing a piece, I can actually practice that piece in my head. I can play through it, whether I'm moving my fingers or not. I can sort of close my eyes, play through it, hear the sound of the piece, and see the keyboard vividly in my mind. And this is a real superpower. It's one of the most important things I think that you can do as you're learning the piano. You can learn it. You can learn how to visualize at the very beginning. In fact, it's good to start practicing visualization at the very beginning when you're just learning single notes and what they sound like, or you can practice visualization up through the most advanced repertoire. You could be learning Chopin etudes and visualizing. Most people will have a hard time getting to an extremely advanced level of piano playing without some sort of visualization, whether they know they're doing it or not. In fact, I've always noticed if you sit around, there's kind of a joke among pianists, if you're sitting around a table, say eating dinner or something, you'll sometimes see someone moving their fingers or sort of practicing something in their head. It's because you sort of get in the habit of doing this, whether subconsciously or consciously. I was once doing that and someone told me, no practicing at dinner. This is a really important skill, and it helps with really a lot of things. I'll give you just a sense. For one thing, it makes you feel much more secure when you're playing. It makes you feel much more secure, especially in front of people, because you're not dependent totally on the feedback of just the sensation and the feel of the keyboard. A lot of times what happens when people are playing in front of people is in front of an audience, they get off a little bit, and then because they're not getting the same sensation, they've played a wrong note that they've practiced many times, they don't have anything to fall back on. And it's a much different experience if you practice visualizing, because you kind of see in your head, okay, this is where I'm supposed to go. It gives you a little bit of a safety net there. If you're in the habit of visualizing, you learn much, much faster. So being able to take a score and manipulate it mentally in your mind, you're going to find that you can just learn and memorize much faster than just playing something over and over again, being dependent on the feedback of the keyboard. And it also allows you to practice away from piano if you need to. So sometimes you might be, they probably used to practice quite a bit on trains, for example, traveling from one location to another. So just being able to sit there and actually have a mental image of what's going on allows you to not be dependent on having a piano there. Now that of course only goes so far, but it's pretty powerful. For me, the main reason I do it is the security and also just the ability to learn much, much faster, because I can start to manipulate mentally the music instead of just playing it over and over again. So how do you learn to visualize? How do you get this vivid mental picture of what's going on? I have always said it's sort of like learning to wiggle your ears. When I was in college, for whatever reason, I wanted to learn how to manipulate this muscle. I don't know if you can, if I can do it on camera, but there's a muscle here that you can kind of wheel your ears back and forth, and it's a muscle most people just don't know how to activate. So I would sit there for a couple weeks. I would just every once in a while during the day, I would just sit there kind of trying to like get my ears to move back and forth, and suddenly one day this muscle just kind of clicked in, and I could move it back and forth, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's how you do it. So I found visualization to be sort of the same thing. In fact, I didn't practice being able to visualize until I was in college. I had gotten, I guess, to a pretty advanced level without consciously doing this. And I remember I would just kind of sit down and I would look at something that I was practicing. I would be away from the piano, and I would try and see in my head, okay, what does that what does that look like? What does that sound like as I'm playing it? So let's say if you're practicing, say, like something like the Raindrop Prelude, I would take just a measure of that, or a little bit of that, and just maybe a fragment like that, and I sit there and just try to see it in my mind. That might sound crazy, and at first it was just like black. Like I would close my eyes and I wouldn't see or hear anything. And then slowly I started to get some sort of mental picture in my mind of what that was like, of what it was like to play it. Now, it's hard to describe what's going on in your head as compared to like if I just open my eyes and I look at the keyboard. But it's not an exact representation, but it is a mental picture. I can actually see and manipulate the notes in my head when I close my eyes. So the first step really is no matter where you are in your piano progress, you can just take something that you're working on, but not a big swath of it, but just a couple notes. I mean, if you're just learning 5-finger patterns, for example, you could just take that much of the 5-finger pattern and then close your eyes and actually one note at a time just try and go through and visualize as vividly as you can. What does that sound like? What does that look like? For me, I'm very visual, so actually being able to see it is helpful. And you can go back and forth. So if you're sitting at the piano, you could try just say 3 notes of that. And then close your eyes. If you want to move your fingers, you can. If you want to, that tends to help some people. But what you want to do is, remember, you're not just trying to move quickly through this, but you actually want to impress upon your mind that what I'm trying to do is actually see this in my head. If you just kind of go, okay, 5-finger pattern, got it, that's not the exercise. The exercise is actually, can I give this some clarity? And when I teach this to students, I find that it's quite aggravating for them at first, sometimes because they don't even know what I'm asking for, but also just because they have to move quite slowly in visualizing. But I promise you, if you can set aside, if you don't have this skill, if you can set aside a minute or 2 a day, even if you're just starting to learn the piano, and instead of just like looking and saying, okay, I'm going to play a G, or I'm going to play, a chord, and waiting for the piano to give you a sense of what that sounds and feels like. If you can start to get to the point where you're like, I'm going to play a chord, and that's going to look and feel and sound like this, and then play the chord, so that you're sort of reversing the order of things, so that you're kind of hearing and feeling and seeing it in your mind first. You can kind of go back and forth like that, and you'll build this skill up of being able to see and hear and feel the piano in your mind. And so I would start with something very simple like that, and then as you're progressing, you can take a measure or 2 at a time. Maybe play something and just play just a measure or so, so say it's the Chopin. Okay, and then I would take that, sit away from the piano, and I won't make you watch me do it all, but I would actually take a few minutes and just say, how far can I get through that? Maybe I would take just that much. Maybe I would take just my left hand and just work it hands alone, and just slowly, brick by brick, build this ability to see and hear in my head. So I'm sorry that there's no kind of secret key that I know of. Part of learning to visualize is just trying to make yourself visualize, but going in small sections like that, forcing yourself to go back and forth, hearing and actually playing the piano, and then visualizing in your head, and doing it, I would say, consistently. So a little bit every day over the course of weeks, rather than just like, oh, when I close my eyes, I just see black, I can't hear anything in my head, I give up. It might take a little while, just like my kind of dumb wiggling the ears story. You might have to just sit there and try it and try it and try it until your mind gets the message. But I promise you that once you do this, it's very powerful. Because once you have that ability, for example, if you're learning a piece, you can have the piece in front of you, be practicing kind of getting it in your fingers, and then taking a measure of that piece and actually visualizing it, giving yourself, it's almost like you're practicing it more than once at the same time, but giving yourself a really clear picture of the piece as you're going through it. So that's my sort of pep talk for visualization, a description of what it is, and some ideas on how to get started. If you find this helpful, check out my free beginner piano lessons and technique lessons below this video. You'll find links, and also please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you next time.